Peppa Pig is always fun to watch with its entertaining episodes, but let's be real, logic is definitely not the show's strong suit. Have you ever noticed how there are a ton of things in the show that just don't make any sense?
Ooh!
Aunt Dottie was, for the longest time, one of the show's biggest mysteries. She's Peppa and George's aunt, but since she lives in another country, she was never seen on screen, only mentioned a handful of times. She finally made an appearance in the 2024 Thanksgiving episode, even though she was first mentioned way back in Horsey Twinkletoes, a 2011 episode. That means she existed in the show's canon for 13 years before actually showing up. The weirdest part? Even in Peppa Pig's world, where time moves differently, Aunt Dottie still went years without seeing her sister, Mummy Pig. Peppa doesn't even remember her, and George had never seen her before, meaning Aunt Dottie only visited Mummy Pig when Peppa was a baby and then never came back. But seriously, is living in another country really an excuse to not visit your family for years? The Pig family has traveled abroad plenty of times, going to France, Italy, the US, and even Australia without any trouble. So what's stopping Aunt Dottie from doing the same? It's almost like she secretly doesn't like her family and avoids them at all costs. Ready to uncover all 14 things that don't make any sense in Peppa Pig? Buckle up, this is Cinewave. Another thing that makes zero sense is how Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig clearly favor George. Sure, at first you might think they just give him extra attention because he's the youngest, while Peppa is older, but they really take it to another level. George got an extravagant birthday party at a museum, complete with a robotic dinosaur and even a themed bouncy castle. Meanwhile, Peppa's birthday was just a small gathering at home where her dad pretended to be a magician. It was fun, sure, but there's no comparison. And it's kinda unfair, especially since Peppa is actually a really good kid. Or maybe she's a total nightmare when we're not looking. Despite being just a little kid, Peppa has already traveled to outer space with her friends. But how did they survive outside of Earth without proper spacesuits? All they wear is a helmet, one that probably has very little oxygen since there are no oxygen tanks attached. And even if they could breathe, no human, or anthropomorphic pig for that matter, could survive the freezing temperatures of space without a proper suit. But okay, let's assume Peppa and her friends are just more evolved than humans and can survive in space without suits. In that case, why do they wear full astronaut gear in another episode? Is it just for style? Peppa Pig has been on TV for over 20 years, yet none of the characters have aged. This happens in shows where time moves really slowly, like The Simpsons or Pokemon, and that's fine. But if that's the case, then how has Peppa's family celebrated 6 Christmases in the show? It doesn't add up. At most, only a year should have passed since the show started. Or maybe in Peppa's world, Christmas happens multiple times a year. That would actually be pretty awesome in real life. We'd all get more presents. Every couple in the show consists of a male and female from the same species. That makes sense, considering different species probably can't have kids together, even in this highly unrealistic world. Or maybe it's just a weird social rule, but if that's the case, how do people even find their partners? It seems like there's only one family of each species in Peppa's town. The only exception is Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig, who met as kids in school. However, even in the flashback where they're young, we don't see other future couples studying together. So did everyone else just marry people from different towns? Yeah, none of this makes any sense. If you want Peppa Pig to fix this plot hole, drop a comment below with #parents. Madame Gazelle's sisters, who are in a band called the Rockin' Gazelles, seem to live somewhere really far away. You can tell in the episode Madame Gazelle's leaving party because their house is in a snowy location, while Peppa's town is still sunny in the same episode. Yet somehow, they managed to travel to Madame Gazelle's house in less than a day. If their cities are close enough for snow, or at least to have colder weather. Hash brown is one of the many living vegetables in the Peppa Pig universe. But if having sentient vegetables wasn't weird enough, his case is even stranger because hash browns have to be prepared and fried to exist. If a potato isn't cooked, it's just a potato. So how does hash brown exist in his current form? Was he originally just like Mr. Potato until someone peeled his skin off and threw him into hot oil? That's actually a pretty creepy thought. Let's just hope he chose to fry himself as a style choice instead of being forced into it by some cruel person. Speaking of which, there's another weird thing related to Mr. Potato and Peppa Pig's other famous vegetable superhero, Super Potato. The two of them look exactly the same, which even led the show's characters to think that Super Potato was actually just Mr. Potato in disguise. But the show itself debunked this theory when they both appeared together, so they're definitely two separate characters, just oddly identical. It's a huge coincidence that makes no sense. Unless, of course, a future episode suddenly reveals that they're actually long-lost twin brothers. Another weird thing? Super Potato has incredible superpowers, unlike any of the other living vegetables. And more importantly, why is a superhero wasting his time hosting TV shows and starring in movies? Wouldn't it make way more sense for him to spend his time saving people? Imagine if he was busy filming a show during that one episode when Mr. Potato needed to be rescued. Well, maybe there's a reasonable explanation for this. Super Potato doesn't use his powers while hosting the show, and we already know he looks just like Mr. Potato. So what if the Super Potato we see on TV is actually just Mr. Potato pretending to be him? Meanwhile, the real Super Potato, with actual superpowers, is out there fighting crime. Poor Daddy Pig gets made fun of a lot, but one thing no one can take away from him is his engineering skills. I mean, he is a professional engineer. Well, actually maybe we can take that away from him. Even though Daddy Pig is supposed to be a highly skilled engineer, there have been plenty of moments where he seems to have no idea what he's doing. Like in that one episode where he brags about knowing how to hang a picture on the wall, only to end up destroying the entire wall while trying to do it. Meanwhile, Mummy Pig fixes the whole thing effortlessly right after. Pretty contradictory, huh? The same thing happens when he explains to the kids that concrete starts out as a liquid before hardening into a solid. For some reason, Daddy Pig thinks it's a great idea to step into wet concrete while explaining this, only to get completely stuck once it hardens. Like, seriously? That was obviously going to happen. And you know what else is obvious? That you won't regret clicking the subscribe button. That way you'll always get daily videos about your favorite cartoons. What we're about to talk about is definitely going to leave you confused because there is absolutely no logical explanation for it. Peppa Pig, her family, and almost every other character in the show all share a very bizarre trait. They only have 3 fingers. And these 3 fingers are huge, which would look downright terrifying in live action. Seriously, imagine a live-action Peppa Pig movie. But the real mystery is how these characters manage to use objects with such weird hands. Everything in the show seems to be designed for normal hands with 5 fingers, yet somehow they all use them effortlessly. Honestly, this makes just a little more sense than shows where characters don't even have fingers, like the Powerpuff Girls. Peppa has a habit of misplacing her teddy bear, Teddy. She lost it multiple times during her trip to Italy, but you know what's really weird? Every single time Teddy went missing, the same police officer magically appeared with it and returned it to Peppa. And it's not like Teddy was lost in the same place. Each time it happened in completely different locations. First on the airplane, then in a restaurant, and finally at the vacation house right when the pig family was leaving Italy. If you really think about it, it's way too much of a coincidence that this same police officer just happened to find Teddy every single time and then somehow tracked down Peppa's family to return it. Is he some kind of lost item specialist, or has he been secretly spying on the pig family this whole time for some creepy reason? Have you ever realized that since each character in Peppa Pig is a different animal, they should all have completely different diets? In real life, most animals can only eat very specific foods, and some are even allergic to certain things. But in Peppa Pig, that logic doesn't apply at all. They all eat like regular humans, even though they still have animal-like traits. For example, Wendy Wolf eats cake at her birthday party, even though cakes contain ingredients that would basically be poisonous to wolves and dogs. So, do they have human digestive systems or something? This world's biology makes zero sense. One of the biggest running jokes in Peppa Pig is about Daddy Pig's, well, significant weight. Seriously, even his own wife and daughter make fun of his big belly. It's made very clear throughout the show that Daddy Pig doesn't exactly live the healthiest lifestyle. But then, the show completely contradicts itself at times, because despite his unhealthy habits, Daddy Pig is ridiculously strong. And when we say ridiculously, we mean superhuman levels of strength. The best example is during the Muddy Puddle jumping contest, where he jumps so high that he literally flies into outer space. And don't forget the moment we mentioned earlier in this video, when he was just trying to hang a picture on the wall and somehow ended up breaking the entire thing, even though he was being careful. So what's the deal? Is Daddy Pig secretly a superhero? Because honestly, that would explain a lot. On your screen right now, you'll see 2 awesome videos we handpicked just for you. Click on one of them to keep the fun going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.